Hello, Jody Raynsford.
Hey,
Hello, listener.
hello,
I,
David Hellard. Hello, listener.
I just 3-2-1's Jody into the song, but he didn't know I was going to 3-2-1 him in, so he was caught off guard by the 3-2-1. So we were still out of time on the sync.
I hear
One
you,
day.
Clem Fandango. I can hear you, Clem Fandango.
Oh man, I've got news. I've got news.
Oh my goodness. Are we going to hear the pitter patter of tiny feet? Is that the news?
Oh, I mean, we tried last night.
Oh my God, why did you have to say that?
Why did you ask? Well, last night we're lying next to each other and like, yeah, we better should, shouldn't we? We want babies, don't we? Yeah, all right, okay. Yeah. Beautiful romantic.
Sounds lovely and romantic. You really eased into married life there. Oh, we really should, shouldn't we?
But we're on the way to like being a stereotypical family. So honeymoon, we're going on in 2 weeks. So do badders.
Where are you going on your honeymoon? Where are you going on your honeymoon, David?
Galapagos.
Oh, that's going to be amazing.
Although this is where I hadn't realised the insurance industry. Briggsy works in insurance, in reality, actuarial, so she's to blame. But we bought tickets, and let's say the tickets are $1,000.
Yep.
Yeah, okay, I can't remember what they are. You've got a choice. You could buy the normal tickets, or you can buy flexible tickets.
Yeah.
Where because travel insurance, I don't believe covers you anymore for COVID rules on trips like this because it's so unpredictable. Who's going to insure that now? So it's about £600 more to have a flexible ticket. So 60% more. So we're there looking at it thinking, we're travelling in 2 weeks. Do you roll the dice? What would you do?
I don't know. Galapagos, that is... What?
Ecuador.
Ecuador.
We're doing a tour of all the Sash songs as the honeymoon.
Not my money. Go for it. Roll the dice.
We're rolling the dice. We've not paid the extra. Well, we figure we'll just isolate before and hopefully, but yeah, who knows? So we've done that, but then we've been trying to find houses.
You're not going to destroy this delicate ecosystem by bringing COVID there, are you? Like the Galapagos is just
a trail of caffeine bullet wrappers.
We're gonna see David Attenborough in like a year's time trying to pull a caffeine bullet wrapper out the nose of a turtle. Be like, oh, you Hellard, you bastard!
17 different starling species all died. All unique to this. Was that the Galapagos? Or was that Christmas Island? Yeah. But we've been trying to find a house since last year when our house fell through almost exactly a year ago, 2 days before we were signing. We've never really talked about houses. It's kind of boring for anyone who doesn't, or flats, anyone who doesn't have one. But the whole system is absolutely nuts over here. And I'm going to say it.
Oh, it is.
The French have it right. The French have got the good system. That bureaucracy.
What's the French system?
The French system.
Because I just don't believe it. I can't believe that they have less bureaucracy than us around something.
No, more bureaucracy.
They have more bureaucracy, okay. Do you have to do an ECG? Is that, they normally do an ECG?
You do, absolutely. With one for every viewing. But sometimes bureaucracy is for a purpose. And in France, and this is all off my brother-in-law's word, so I do believe this all to be
so
true.
It might not even be correct. Brilliant, okay.
But I believe it to be true, because he lives in France.
Well, it doesn't matter, there's no one listening in France, because there's no one reviewing in France, so it doesn't matter, just make it up.
That's true. Tu petit merde. That's to our no French listeners, but my awful French. But so if you put a price on your property, if someone offers you that price, legally you have to accept it.
Right.
So you don't get in this whack bidding position. But also, once you've accepted it, you then put down a deposit, which if you then don't go through with the purchase, you lose the deposit. So people people don't get gazumped in the same way. People don't get screwed over 2 days before the contract's signed, having waited 4 months with all the surveying and blah, 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 ordering furniture. And it means so yesterday we were kind of bad people, and I didn't know how else to do it because the housing market was such that a huge number of people put properties on the market at the beginning of January.
Yeah.
They then had the first proper weekend of January, open houses with loads of people going around. And on Monday, yesterday, we were having to do final bids on any property we liked. And so you're faced with a scenario where you think, well, in theory, I should only do final bid on one property because that's the right thing to do. But if I lose it, I then lose everything. Yeah. So we were in this weird situation where we were having to do final bids on 2 properties where we could have won both, one or neither. But also it's just a crazy scenario where the price of a property is based purely on the desperation of 2 people. It's nothing to do with.
That's market forces, man. That's market forces and lack of demand. Yeah. I mean, you talk about gambling. I mean, it is. You're rolling the dice with the most expensive purchase you'll ever make.
Yeah. So we saw this place on Sunday. No. We saw 4 places, and as with our previous searches, the more places we saw, the more it showed us that none of them had everything, which causes issues. But inevitably, you find a place that is going to be far away from where you want to be. That place is amazing, and then you're like, I really want the amazing place in the place I want to be, which you'll never have. So you're just stowing issues and resentment and
classic Kirsty and Phil situation there. I want this house in that location.
Yes, exactly.
As Kirsty says, you can't have everything. How dare you? You cannot have everything in life.
Poor husband. You can, Briggsy. You can. And so on Monday lunchtime yesterday, we saw the house, looked around and went, okay, yeah, we like it. We then had to put an offer in, which was final offer. And then 24 hours later, we have a house.
Oh, amazing. Amazing.
Finally.
Congratulations.
A year and a half on. So I realised to the viewer, this is not about running and it's not, but quite significant for me. And it means I need a new running club.
Wait.
An additional running club.
So wait a minute. So what is it? Is it the good house in a not great location, or is it the great location, but the house isn't exactly what you wanted? I'll say the places. We had a choice between New Cross and Dulwich / Peckham. We went around the house and we were like, actually, this is everything we need in a house. And it's in the area we want. And it's got good schools, boring stuff like that. It's got great pubs. It's got playground there, and it's got Peckham Rye. Why do you need to be near a playground, David?
I like to undermine legal orders, court orders.
When you're asking the estate agent, you go, oh yeah, it's good there's a playground there, and they're looking at Briggsy to see whether she's pregnant, looking around to see whether you've got any kids. That's a strange.
Oh, Briggsy didn't come with me. Briggsy,
but just a group of lads.
Yeah, exactly. And it's got Peckham Rye, which can run round, which is great, and it's near to London, so I can run to London. But the New Cross one was this absolutely pimp pad where you could. It's strange. While we both decided it was the right decision, neither of us were that excited compared to the previous place. We were like, oh my word, imagine if we had that pad, we'd be able to have a projector and people could come around and watch sports, and we'd be the hostess with the mostess. But yeah, so we now have a new place, and I need to find some new running routes, once I'm about running, and a new running club, an additional running club to Bad Boy and Heathside. So yeah, all changed. Time for some Strava segments.
Oh man. I mean, I don't know anything about South London, so I don't really know where those places are. But it's exciting. Exciting.
It's where Del Boy is.
That's what I thought, Peckham.
And there's
are you in next to Nelson Mandela House?
think they might have pulled it down, sadly.
Oh, really? I was going to say that it probably got some issues with cladding or something if it's still around.
Yeah, probably. But they've still got the actual car from the series is in a hotel, something like a Premier Inn or a Holiday Express, in the garden, the front garden of the hotel is the Robin Reliant that you can see.
They absolutely should have a statue done of Del Boy, because that is incredible. That is Peckham's most famous son, isn't it? Oh no, that's amazing news. That must be such a massive relief as well, especially when
mainly relief.
You're going on honeymoon as well, which is going to be amazing. So two amazing things.
So I'm leaving you for a few weeks, but I'm leaving you in a hornet's nest of feedback from everyone.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? It's really interesting. We do a few episodes and stuff like that. And we get feedback on various things, and then we're obviously talking about Tim Noakes, and as a result of the first podcast that we did with him, it became very apparent that we didn't know how to respond to some of the things we were saying, and instead of nodding and saying yes, we just said we don't know how to respond to these things, and so. The second episode, of course, was entirely intended to counter the fact that he's making these claims and we need someone to counter them, or we need someone to back them up. And I listened to the episode that you did, and I think you did an amazing job. And I think it's a really compelling episode. Why are you making that face?
Well, it's because I've not listened to the second half of it yet, and so.
Why? The fact is, actually, there's two parts to that interview. There's the part where there's a continuation of the issues that we wanted to talk about in the first one. We didn't have time to do it. There was so much to talk about. We talked about his career and all the things that he'd done before he was basically ostracized from the scientific community. And then I think it was really interesting the way that he started the interview, asking about kind of like the practicality of what it's like to be part of the scientific community and what it's like to then be outside it, from the darling to the devil, I think you said. Yeah. And I think it was great. I honestly can't remember anyone else ever having that discussion with him.
And that's because it's really we've had quite mixed feedback, D-Badders, which if you're on Instagram you'd have seen. Probably the biggest allegations being that it was irresponsible to be publicising COVID, falsehoods about COVID. But yeah, the whole point of and the hard thing is I feel a little bit trapped in how we respond, because at the same point I don't really want to be tearing down or challenging previous guests about their views when I didn't do it at the time, and they're not there to respond. So it's quite, but the whole idea of it was. People had, whenever we had the first interview with Tim, and we were saying, what questions do you have for him? A lot of the response was around how he's now just this COVID denier, and maybe not a denier, but he's a COVID skeptic about certain things. So I really wanted to get a sense of, I think a big part of the world at the moment is people don't really understand how people get into their positions, how they get into their viewpoints. And it's quite easy to mock QAnon or flat earthers, but there is a route where, they're not people who have what I call fairly extreme views, really, aren't necessarily bad people and aren't necessarily stupid and have followed a path to reach. You almost edged out into more and more, I'd say extreme, but I guess counterculture views. And so I wanted to get a sense of how that happens with someone like Tim, to give context to everything else. So yeah, it's a hard one, where I did feel during the interview that I wasn't equipped with enough facts to really challenge him on everything, but at the same point,
yeah, I don't necessarily think that's so much of an issue, because you're talking about something. There is a certain truth to what he's saying about how he feels he has been treated by the scientific community, and he puts it down to a specific trigger point, and it's really, and that trigger point was with the hypnotremia. If you're not listening to the podcast, absolutely listen to it, because he kind of explains this in much better detail, of course. But the publication of that, and that's when everything changed. And whether it changed because of the reasons that he thinks it happened, or like his perception of it, and he thinks that his funding was suddenly cut from that, and then everything else that kind of spiraled from it. That is his trigger point. That is the point at which he changes, and the point at which he changes his perception. And you're absolutely right. And I think this goes actually beyond like sports science, and beyond here. I mean, this is true for like most of society at the moment. Like, if someone believes in Brexit, people are still fucking fighting Brexit. I mean, like, this is kind of insane, but people are still calling people that voted for Brexit thick and stuff like that. Like, what? Why? Nothing's actually going to get fixed, or we're never going to come to an understanding unless someone takes a step back and actually thinks, right, how do you get to those positions? Because I think that's exactly what happened in that episode, is the fact that once you had a discussion, it turns out that what Rini was talking about, and the things that Rini's focused on, is very different from what Tim's talking about. Yeah. And so they don't contradict each other. I mean, overlaying the stuff that Tim's saying, "Oh, read the science," and things like that, and the issues with that. Fundamentally, they're coming from different. But I think the other thing that's really hard, and it's hard for, I think, as an interviewer, and when you're trying to pull things together, is that that whole straw man argument element. That most of the things that have been ascribed to Tim having said, he's never said those things, or he's said things in a certain way that it's been perceived as because he. One of the big pieces of podcast, one of the pieces of feedback received is about if you're intelligent and you're bullish, you can steamroller most things, and so Jordan Peterson is exactly the same. If you listen to what like Jordan Peterson says, and the actual content of the loads of stuff is subscribed to him having said in his position of this alt-right figure. But actually, when you break down what he's actually said and all and everything else, that all of his output. The things that he's supposed to have said aren't the things that he said, and so actually you kind of take a step back and have time to kind of explore that. Then you actually realise that there's not a massive amount of difference. There's not a massive disagreement. There's disagreement on certain points, but there's not a massive disagreement in terms of the two areas that they're talking about. And so I think you handled that really, really well.
He put across a lot of facts and a lot of that. And I called him up on a few, like 100 footballers have died, and like, what, who? And a lot of, and in.
See, the thing is, I looked that up as soon as it, and I'm like, I mean, there have been a lot of footballers that have died, whether that's subscribed to COVID, but there have been a lot of deaths, and then immediately you get into that thing of straight away you can see there's people saying it's COVID, and then people debunking it, and but then actually no one's actually looking at what the facts are.
But and I wanted to have almost a follow up with him about discussions where he said certain things and said, look, and thinking it through logically, if there have been this many deaths from top end footballers, it would be the same for rugby players, hockey players, American football players, baseball players. There's nothing unique about a footballer compared to another sports person. And actually, if this thing is caused by the people having inoculations and vaccines, it would happen for all top level athletes, and that is not the case. And therefore we conclude that it is just a random sample that's happened to football, because he can't argue and we'd look at rates, but for example rugby players I'm sure have probably been inoculated at a higher rate than footballers, just because they tend to come from more middle-class backgrounds. And actually, I said that I've made a huge assumption there about who gets inoculated. But I'm sure if you look at different sports, they're
better people. You're going to make a value.
They're better people.
They're better, more caring people.
They're God's people. But I'm sure if you look at professional athletes, footballers don't have a higher take-up of vaccinations than other sports. And therefore, we would assume, if the assertion is that he's making, that all sports would have a similar level of deaths, which hasn't happened. So therefore we can discount that. Now, he can't argue against that, because that is just pure statistical logic. So I'd love to have a conversation about things like that, and about the death rates. The death rates are higher in countries. But I've had a couple of messages. There are three big messages that I thought were really interesting about this. And the first one was, which actually I don't think we could have come to this conclusion ourselves without someone. So I won't say Jen's full name, but Jen has messaged in, and she said actually a lot of his view on medicine and on funding is because he's from South Africa. And so there's a huge difference between the relationship between big pharma and education and hospitals from country to country, which makes sense. Even the UK to the US has a dramatically different relationship between hospitals and industry, because we have the NHS, one massive behemoth who's more powerful than any of the medical firms in what they decide, versus America, where there are hospitals who are paid by insurance, and so the more they charge, the more they make. So it's a huge different system. But she was saying that he was saying about read the science, read the facts, and actually he says either the South African medical system is very corrupt and different from ours, or he's very out of touch with current practice. Everything that's taught at medical school is not directed by big pharma, like he said, quite the opposite. We're actually taught how to identify pharma influence in biased research and how to critically analyze research papers. So, that is very reassuring, the fact that not only does it not happen, but people are trained to try and ensure that it can't happen. And he said that he proved 10 years ago about diabetes is reversible, but by diet. And only last year did his local hospital start doing something about it. And she said, I was taught at medical school 15 years ago that diabetes can be reversed by diet. And this has been NHS practice throughout that time. So she's got another point. He said that COVID is the disease of the unhealthy, and actually that it was to do with diabetes, the biggest risk factor in dying of COVID. And if people lose weight, they will make themselves immune. He said that's also not true. In fact, age is the biggest risk factor of dying of COVID. And people with low visceral fat have still died of COVID. Losing fat does not make you immune. You can still die of COVID. So actually, it's interesting where he's now seen as almost an authority for anti-medicine and anti-medical training and the system, but because he's almost seen as being from a westernized country, whereas actually South Africa is a very different system to Europe and most other countries in the world. And so his personal experience is only true to South Africa.
What I struggled with was that for long periods of what he was saying, I agreed with. Not necessarily agree, but I just thought, well, that makes sense, or we already know that, or surely everyone knows that, or it was only really when it started, when it came to talking about the kind of the specifics, and when Rini was talking as well, and then when of course we got into all the COVID stuff. But a lot, up to a point, a lot of the stuff makes it things like it's just the thing is it's always what's behind it. There's something with what he's doing. He's obviously he's been established in sports science, and he's had these things, and now, I mean, he's very open about it. That now he's talking about public health, and he is in an area that maybe he hasn't got doesn't have the same level of sports science expertise, but he has had personal experience, anecdotal experience, and he constantly calls on anecdotal experience, which he obviously values very highly. And so he ends up in a point where he's obviously talking to people on a much broader level. But when he's talking about things like the way that the research is influenced and things like that, you listen to that, you're like, But yeah, that does happen. We know that happens. Like, yeah, that does happen. I mean, like, but again, it's different in different places. Like, I think in the US, absolutely, that is much, much stronger. You know, when you have the American Heart Association and all of those promoting things, which clearly aren't the same as what's being promoted, you know, in a system where we've got the NHS. And I think the interesting thing was it was talking about that, you know, research is still. There's still a lot of kind of like state-funded research in the UK compared with lots of other places as well, which I don't.
And Europe.
Yeah, which haven't fact-checked, but that would be interesting to if anyone knows whether, you know, has experience of that, whether, you know, you don't have that undue influence. But there's a lot of things where you kind of go, well, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense because that's, you know, that's what my understanding is of that. What's mine, and then it gets to the point where we start talking about COVID and risk factors and everything else, and it's just I think the motivation he has is that he's been in that situation of being overweight, and he feels like he's pretty.
He's on a crusade.
Say angry. He is on a crusade. He's a campaigner. That's the thing. You're arguing against a campaigner now. You're not arguing against a scientist who needs to do that. You're arguing against a campaigner, and it is a campaigner which he has a personal stake in, and he vehemently believes. And it's almost the discussion changes when it's that, because he's had personal experience. He's heard from people who he has obviously helped through that. And when you're a campaigner, you just can't let nuance get in the way, and that's the thing, and that's what he's kind of switched to becoming, and that's it. The reasons behind everything, I think, is different. You know, everyone has the idea that, you know, what's happened is, I mean, I don't know, maybe you don't. I agree in the sense that what has happened in terms of people being forced to have vaccines, I think is shocking. I don't think people should be forced to have vaccines. And I think that there's there is a big question mark over losing our freedoms and other things like that, weighing against the public good and things like that. But it's interesting, like some people take that of like it's a giant conspiracy theory and there's a huge agenda. And I think, you know, the point that you made is like, I think it's just plain incompetence, and we're kind of slipping into this because governments don't know what to do. And he was absolutely right about the public health. If public health really was a massive concern, then, you know, we would have been thinking about the cancer patients. We were thinking about that. But again, you made the point, which I completely think is absolutely spot on, in the sense that they're not front of mind. The government is, you know, incompetent. Most governments are going to be incompetent, and because they can't help it, because they are incompetent in this, because this is a pandemic like they've never seen before. But they do the one thing that they think they could do: deal with the problem in front of them that people are dying of every single day. Like, you know, we don't talk about the 50,000 flu deaths that we have every year, because that happens to, you know, we kind of forget about old people, but they're not interested. You know, it's the thing that's in front of them that they have to deal with, and so that's the thing. It's not a massive. It's very difficult to then subscribe that there's a huge agenda behind it, but that's kind of where people go. And I'm kind of glad actually that he did cut it off with that. Have you read the book yet?
No, I'm not a great reader. I read the week, and then but also I was thinking, if I read the book, I'd then have to read something about the book to give context to the book. Have you read the book?
No, I've not read the book. It was the first time I heard it. The thing is, it's almost like loaded already, isn't it, with the title of it? But you know, I'm gonna read it. I'll give it a go and see what it says, because it's because the thing is, the subtitle of it is The Real Anthony Fauci: Bill Gates, Big Pharma, and the Global War on Democracy and Public Health. So that kind of tells you everything you need to know about that book.
Yeah.
But I was thinking, what I might
Why do people? Why do people think? Oh yeah, go ahead.
What I might do? Well, because people say things about Chris Whitty as well, and you just look at Chris Whitty, you think, I don't think he would do that kind of thing. He doesn't seem the type. He seems such a nice guy. I do think, though, when it comes to things like conspiracy theories, like with the flat earth and stuff you said, you're absolutely right. People to get to a point. I just wonder whether I should spend a month, like, just becoming a conspiracy theorist, just reading all the conspiracy theories, going through it, delving into that, and just seeing where it takes. Because I've got people on my Facebook feed who are, there's like 9/11 deniers on there. There's people that deny all kinds of stuff, and and they're absolutely like veering left, right, and centre around all of this. And this is kind of like harvest time for them because it's in everyone's mind. And I just find it like how to kind of get in the mind of someone, because like you said, really understanding what motivates someone and what has caused someone to get to that point, I think it's really important. It's really important for how we go forward as well.
I find it hard to understand how they can be so like detailed and analytical about trying to find correlations to prove certain things, and yet they won't apply the same vigor to any of their viewpoints. And I just find it quite like, at what point did Mark Zuckerberg and Bill Gates, who both created things that no one had used before and became rich from nowhere without, what did this global conspiracy decide that Facebook was going to be massive in 5 years' time, and then take a college dropout to program it, knowing he'd then be part of their cabal to control the world? Like,
but it always works backwards, doesn't it? It's always the thing with most conspiracies. It's always connecting the dots backwards, going, oh look, you're looking at the end result, and then you're looking at patterns that lead up to it, rather than if the conspiracy theory was so obvious, you'd be able to kind of predict what's going to happen next.
And what happens? How is it so many of these like billionaires lose their money and politicians get voted out or get caught up in scandals, or if the whole system is working as one, if it's a cohesive system?
Well, that's the thing. That's what I want. That's what I want to know. That's what I want to know. It's like, how do you kind of justify all this? Because it's very easy to kind of brush everything under, isn't it? And say, oh, I think that's another point a few people make. When we're talking about read the research, because that's the big call, isn't it? But then, if you're then discrediting that research and saying, well, the research on these people is.
And that's the hard thing. Tim was saying, I always read the research, but then he discounts all research. But he was saying, no research it's all funded, you can't trust it, but read the research. So how do you then decide which is good research and bad research, given that you think all research is bad because it's funded by Big Pharma?
The thing is, right, so this is a classic marketing tactic. It's a classic sort of indoctrination tactic. It's a classic way of entrenching a position so much, because the thing is, and we've seen this actually in the feedback, people don't really like nuance. People like good, evil, black, white, things like that. And the thing is, the people that know how to win someone to a campaign and will get someone behind them knows that there can't be any shades of grey. That by saying carbs are poison, it sets out your point really clear. It's incredibly polarizing. I'm starting to quote bits of my book here. It's incredibly polarizing. It's incredibly polarizing, but it's really, really. I mean, the reason why certain diets work is because they're really, really simple. And if people can latch onto something that's really simple to follow, has a really simple viewpoint, and sees that, like, no one wants to hear the truth that actually there's lots of there's sort of multivariate factors that you have to take into account, and everything else. Some people just like certainty, and there's an emotional need for that. That something's happened in their life, or something's happened that they don't have the belonging that they may have had from a family unit or a group of people, and they find it by it being able to relate to other people, which I think the whole thing's fascinating. But I think definitely with Tim, he's a campaigner now. He has switched to being a campaigner, and he is doing what he needs to do to achieve the thing. And to him, the most important thing is getting people to not have diabetes. And he makes some really good points. If the governments were really serious about public health, you would ban ultra processed foods. You absolutely would. It would be the single quickest, easiest way to do that. But then as I was thinking that makes a good point. Then I was thinking, well, doesn't that impinge on people's freedoms as well?
That's the trouble, right? They're saying, why should I have to? Don't force me to have a COVID jab, but force people not to have.
You're not allowed, and we're banning, like New Zealand, we're banning cigarettes. if you're under a certain age, we're going to totally eradicate cigarettes. You're like, it's a real hard thing to deal with in terms of freedom. So you're just replacing one freedom with another. So in conclusion, I've no idea.
So, D-Badders, should we do? And I don't know if Tim will do enough.
Are you happy? Are you happy with it? Are you happy? Because the thing is, there has been a little bit of criticism, but I wouldn't say that it's. I think the feedback from Do-Badders who've listened to it and understand that this is part of a series of conversations, that makes sense because they understand like where we're coming from. People that have randomly comment on social media who I mean, the idea that you're platforming is absolute rubbish. The whole idea that bringing someone to come up against him is the fact that you're actually creating a debate. You can't completely silence people. You need people to give those views open air so other people can challenge them.
Well, I mean, I don't know how, because I'll be happier once I see Rini at the running show, because I'd hate for her. From the comments, I think she's thought that she's been slagged off after she left, which hasn't happened. I'd hate for her to think that anything that in some way she was hoodwinked into a position that she wasn't aware of, or because I think she came across incredibly well.
Absolutely.
And she put a point across incredibly well, and it's just unfortunate they have different sides, and they had a. But even at the time, I didn't think this is going badly. I thought actually this is quite good. They are putting their positions, and they kind of agreed to disagree. So that would be my big main regret, is if Rini has any bad feelings towards the podcast or myself about what's happened, because everything has been done with the best intentions, but also I really respect the fact Tim's come on here and he's had open conversations with us, and I'd like to disagree with Tim, not criticize Tim, and it's very hard to ensure that you're clear about that there's a separation between the two, and we're not having a go at Tim, we're challenging his views. And because I've always been drawn into challenges of mansplaining, which I don't think is true at all. I don't think anything Tim has said is anything to do with him being a man or Rini being a woman or anything like that. I think he just has
That's
his view. Yeah. His view is that you've almost been brainwashed by the system. Which in his system, that's been.
And he doesn't mind. That's it. He doesn't mind saying that in front of you. I mean,
yeah.
And that's probably more to do with being South African than a man.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're opening that box up. But the
other thing that I can't help feeling, and this is I just can't help feeling, is that I just really like him.
I like him. Yeah.
The fact that he is willing to come on and talk about it and talk about some of the things that knowing he's going to be fully challenged on them as well.
Yeah. The second one he came into, the first one we gave him a bit of to and fro. The second one he came into knowing that I wanted to invite him back to get Rini on to challenge his views, like with the sole intention of representing a view that I don't think he was factoring in. So Do-Badders, do you want us to do a third one where we get someone who is the hard thing will be, if we do a third one, we could get someone in who's a proper expert on global statistics, but also like the process of COVID rollouts and various things like that. I think the hard thing will be, though, that the question mark comes, it then will lead to the challenge will be at the end of that is there a global conspiracy under Bill Gates? And that's a thing where he doesn't want to talk about, understandably, because he realizes the tarnish that will give, and we won't be able to resolve that question, because how can you ever unpick such a big...
Let's do a poll. Let's do a poll in the group. Is there a global conspiracy under Bill Gates? Let's let the Do-Badders...
We'll do a poll. Should we do a Tim Noakes part 3? And see what people say. Tim might not want to come back. He might do.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure doing it on COVID is the right thing, because I just think there's too much involved in.
Yeah.
There's just there's too much tied up with everything, and the positions are too entrenched. And I think it's different in the sense that,
it's deeply personal as well.
Deeply personal. That's the thing. That's it. It's got emotional now. And so, whereas his views have changed in terms of like the sports science stuff that he's doing, and I think because the personal element around the diabetes and the fact he feels like 10 years, 12 years of his life have been taken from him because of the incorrect advice that was given.
And his entire professional world was turned against him. I mean, I can't imagine to begin to think what that would be like and how that would affect you. That is a trauma where it wouldn't surprise me if PTSD comes from something like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But moving on to something more fun, D-Birds, we need your feedback because we need your insight, your input. Martin Dickey came on a few weeks ago, Mr. Brewdog, and he was in the pocket of the episode. He asked for a challenge. I said to run a sub 80-minute 5K. Now, I've been struggling with injuries and motivation and various things myself. So I then messaged him and said, do you want to race to see who can run under 18 minutes first as a motivation to get fit and fast? Fortunately, I'm injured again. But the question is, what should the forfeit or the prize be? He's training for a marathon, I think, in May. So he's going to be in good shape. Just to give you the scores on the doors, he's I don't think he's gone sub 18 before, but he's run a sub 3 marathon. My marathon time is outdated, but I run a 16:32. But that was when I was running comrades training 100 miles a week. So a long, significantly faster than my normal pace.
There should be an expiry date, shouldn't there, on PBs? It's like my PB was recorded 10 years ago. Like there's no way. What's the point of it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think I'm used to training more miles. I don't know if I'm naturally a better runner or not, or a faster runner. And so this is why I think it's quite nice, because in theory, I should be able to get down to a quicker time with my knowledge and experience, but whether I can before he does, I don't know. I've done 16:32.
16:32.
But that was significantly...
When was the last 5K you ran? Like raced? Can't remember.
That's probably the last one I raced, because that was comrades, and then, although I've done some park runs, I'd have done some not races, but I'd have done some park runs that would have been like 17:30s. So like a typical park run for me would be like if I did a 17:30-40 on a flat course, I'd be like, yeah, I'm in pretty good shape. I'm not in great shape, not in bad shape, to give you context. So it basically means I'm getting back to being a reasonably good version of myself. Should it be a reward or should it be a punishment? And what should it be? I'm up for something spicy. I like the idea of when Jody and I had our bet where I was going to run a marathon with peanut butter all down the back of my legs throughout, as if I'd shat myself from the start. I like the idea of something like that.
Just go to the running show and experience it for real.
True. I wanted to test the water.
I hope there's no. Was it Lidl and Aldi?
Lidl.
I hope there's no Lidls in the Galapagos. There is.
Yes, that was.
Conquered the Galapagos.
Do an Instagram page. Well, I wouldn't post about that. What are the ideas? Given that obviously Martin has a huge resource of Brewdog and their stuff on their side. I've got the caffeine bullet things and various stupid things
level the forest if you lose.
What are some fun things, some silly things that we should or could do that would be fun? Because the challenge is going to be motivating by itself as soon as I'm fit again. But we want a fun end story to this. So I'll put that in the.
He's already training for this.
He's not training for this. So
He's already trained.
Martin's
He's already
journey's
going through a training cycle.
He's going through a training cycle, and he's certainly still on upward trajectory. He's getting faster. He's running more miles. He's getting used, and he's also a younger runner in terms of his running cycle. We know when we spoke to
Gene has given me the secret. The secrets are running.
Exactly. So he's going to be improving even if he just carries on doing.
It sounds like getting an excuse in early there. I like that.
It is.
The gene theory.
Yeah, exactly. So what should the punishment or reward be? And it could be a punishment and a reward on each side, like a carrot and a stick, and then reversed different ones. Suggestions, please. Now I've got a few bits of news of running stuff. That is, and one other thing, do-badders, we've decided in honour of Marathon Talk,
because we've got so many new Marathon Talk listeners.
So many. We're going to do a Marathon Talk episode where we do a bad stuff exactly along the lines of Marathon Talk.
In honour, not a piss take.
No, in honour. I'm going to ask Holly to see if she'll come on as well. But where we will do things like rate my park race instead of rate my run. But what other elements of Marathon Talk will you miss? Do you miss? Should we do a bad boy version of? We're going to steal the music, copy the music, sing the music, and then just have a bad boy Marathon Talk episode in a few weeks' time. So let us know what it is that we should put in or twists on those ideas, and we'll then put that together for you, for your delight, and hopefully theirs, but maybe not. Did you see the 100-mile record's gone again?
Oh my goodness. He's doing it in advance of being able to talk to something at the running show, that's it.
He is. We've just sorted out his flights yesterday, so he's definitely coming now. So Sanya, I mean, we spoke to Zach Bitter, talked to him about his 100-mile time, where he was saying he thinks at some point in the future it might be possible to run 100 miles in less than 11 hours. So he's done it in 10:51.
Oh, I mean, that is. I just can't even comprehend that. What is the average pace on that?
Oh my! He's running 6 minutes 30 a mile.
What?
Yeah, I think that's what he was running. I'll just see if that was his average by the end. That's what he was clocking, he was going for the 12-hour record as well. So he could do that faster. He still had another hour of running left to do when he ran that. Yeah, I mean that is an insanely fast time. We're talking, to give context, that is like a 1:25 half, I think, off the top of my head. The 2:50 marathon for 11 hours.
It's funny, isn't it? Like just how all these records are falling so quickly. What was he wearing? Cheat shoes? Was he wearing cheat shoes?
I don't know, actually. I don't know if it says that. You'd think so. I don't even know who Alexandra is sponsored by. It's not. Oh, yeah, that's a good question. You'd think he must do, because otherwise it's quick Google.
I mean, you couldn't be able to equate an hour's improvement as a result of that. Well, over an hour's improvement as a result of those. But I'd just be interested to see whether they were a factor.
I'll ask him because the Nike
Just imagine saying that to someone. Oh, how did you do it, Wicken? I knocked over an hour off my 100 marathon PB. Like, that is.
Oh no, he didn't knock an hour off. Sorry, no, he broke the hour limit. He was the first one to go under 11. But what was his previous then? That's a good question. It was certainly over 11 hours.
Oh, okay. So it wasn't okay.
Yeah, but I mean, it's still Yeah, he was wearing Alpha Fly, of course he was, which makes a big difference. But particularly, that's something we'll have to talk to him about at the run show. Is people are talking we know how much a difference they supposedly make in terms of your efficiency, but whether these shoes, they make you faster in short distances still, we can see that from the track, but if it almost magnifies the impact at greater distances, because wear and tear is what stops you in long distance. So if you're just removing that very slightly, does it build up at a greater benefit over the course of a 100-miler to, say, doing a 5K run?
Okay, so yeah, his previous was 11:14:56 set at the Centurion.
25 minutes faster.
I mean, that's still ridiculous.
That is absolutely ridiculous. Yeah. Well, even if you were doing that for a mile, if you think that he is the best in the world, wow. So divide that by 100. Let's quickly do the maths. So 100, 1300. Yeah, I mean, it's looking like 13 seconds per mile. If it was just a mile equivalent, losing 13 seconds off your mile, your best mile. Unbelievable.
I know, it's just what actually, that's something to probably explore at the running show. Asking, what is in that 25 minutes? Like what was done differently? What was done differently, to do that? Because of course, there's all sorts of stuff about him training in Kenya and things like that. So, but if other people looking to knock 25 minutes off their 100-mile PB, what do they have to do? Oh, we should totally set that up as a headline for something, like a Runner's World style headline. How to knock 25 minutes off your 11-hour 100 mile.
Yeah, how to write. Well, for most people, they don't care about knocking 25 minutes off their time of 36 hours to 35:30. Just do it again, a different course. But he's coming on the Saturday now, so I've just been liaising with him about his logistics. So we're talking to him Sunday morning. What's quite fun is we're doubling it up with Salomon asked if they could do a session where they're taking 4 of their best ultra runners and they're trying to set a new world record for the longest distance run over 24 hours on a track. So they're taking 2 men, 2 women, but it's people like Ricky Lightfoot, who he doesn't run track, he doesn't run roads, he just runs fells. And so we're going to be contrasting having...
Thanks, Salomon. Thanks. A sponsorship.
I'm going
to put you in the total opposite of your ideal environment, and and see how you cope. There's no real
and publicise it to everyone.
Exactly, make sure everyone, and you're going to be judged. You're going to be judged on this. Forget all those other achievements. You're going to be judged on this one thing.
You should have read your contract. It's probably like just a little line in there. It's just like, and any other world record attempts that Salomon see fit.
Salomon start turning into Taskmaster, and now he's gonna have to throw a number of pork pies into some like onto a pool table and try and get them in the pockets or something. Like, what's this doing in the contract?
I mean, I'm up for that. But so because he's flying in the Saturday, he's talking Sunday morning. I mentioned that we're going out hard Saturday night. So this is our challenge, do badders. And he won't be listening to this episode, I'm sure. Can we break the unbreakable man in the pub the night before? That is and what's his limit? We should have a sweepstake on what his limit is. Is it 100 units? So hopefully you'll come out on the Saturday night. And actually, I'll have to tell the translator that he's coming Saturday and see if he wants to come out for beers as well, because that might help. But yeah, that is something to look forward to. Insanely fast, insane records, and I wonder whether that changes if people who have been doing track 100-milers, who are some of the best in the world, what do they do now? Because as with all running, people tend to do the thing they get rewarded for most, which is why most of us are ultra runners, because we get kudos for finishing because we're not good enough to get kudos for our times.
We get participation medals, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh,
so
well
now,
done, you ran a long distance.
So now that he's so significantly faster than everyone else, no one else can go for that world record. I don't believe. Maybe Zach thinks he can. I'd be surprised. But do the people who were second, third, fourth, fifth in the world, are they happy to continue being that? Or are they going to switch to something else that they can potentially try and be first in the world at? Because do you want to be stuck behind Michael Johnson for the whole of your life?
Pick the races you can podium. Pick the races
you can podium if
that's the situation.
Exactly. Well, that's been a good little session. Let us know, D-Batters, about your marathon talk ideas. Let us know about what the bet should be with Martin. Should it be a reward? Should it be a punishment? And what should those be? And please do leave us reviews. If you're in France, we've given you a compliment, finally. Or anywhere else in the world. We don't have reviews from random countries. We don't have a review from Lebanon, and we've been number one in the running charts of Lebanon for about a year and a half. So whoever that...
They love us in Lebanon.
They love us in Lebanon. They do. They do. And we've had a review recently. The funnier the better. We'll read them out. It just says, Zippy and George talk about running. I mean, reasonable thing to say. But this is signed off by Birmingham's Ray Liotta.
What? I don't even know how that works.
I know. I love that. It's Bruno Birmingham's Ray Liotta.
No,
he's Birmingham's Kenny Everett, isn't he?
Proud Boy. Oh, yeah, Kenny Everett.
Birmingham's Proud Boy. He's the most sexist man on earth. Other than...
You know what? I tell you something really funny about that. I'm sat in my office, in our shared office, and the guy we're sat next to is really interesting. He's done loads of stuff with his life and things like that. And in 2014, he was announced as Britain's 7th most sexist man by Huffington Post. I was like, how did that situation come about?
I want to talk about this in the next episode as a full... I want this properly researched. And
in 2014, Britain's 7th most sexist man in 2014. I wonder if it's still even on there.
Right, because this deserves more time, and I've got to go. So, number 1, we're going to talk about that. Number 2, we're going to find out who the editor is. Number 3, we're going to edit that article, and you know who's going in there. You know it. We want a revised one. No, we're not going to do that to you, Bruno. Don't worry, Bruno. We'll put you in as a pseudonym. It'll be fine. Yeah, so please do leave reviews. It really helps. But in particular, if you listen to us on Spotify, use the Spotify app and please rate the podcast, because at the moment you can now rate us on Spotify, and that'll make a huge impact on how we're shared, how we're seen, and that helps us get good guests. If you want any guests in particular or any topics, email me, message me, letters at badboyrunning.com, or Instagram gets to me as well.
If you want to join the conversation, head over to Facebook, type in Bad Boy Running Podcast, answer 3 questions, and join in the fun over there. If you want to look like an absolute tit at races, you can buy some of our merchandise. Head to store.badboyrunning.com.
And YouTubers, write in your answer to the Marathon Talk and the Marketing.
Make sure you subscribe. Subscribe, comment below. Do you know what? And we never get that. My kids are really good at doing fake YouTubing. Like they'll be filming themselves, going like literally about 2 minutes into talking to it and going, make sure you hit subscribe now. Give us a comment. Let us know what your favourite thing. You know, just
why don't we record them?
What, my children?
Yeah, just have them doing the outro.
That would be quite good.
Come on,
that'd be fun. Idea. That is a good idea. They do it much.
And I'll get the noise of my little swimmers doing the intro. You get the noise of Your children doing the outro. There we go.
There we go. Good idea.
Thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you next time.